Asa, thank you so much for being on the show. I know we met at a pavilion event a couple months ago, or maybe it was a year ago. My time flies so fast these days, but I just remember just having such a great conversation with you. Also, given that you had been in the space, you were sort of in the like maybe V1 of interactive sales collateral and these sort of things, working with Scott Brinker, who's now over at HubSpot. So shout out to Scott. I know he's, I guess these days, considered the godfather of MarTech, or at least the category. So I really appreciate your time. And you are also in Florida. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Grateful to be here. Yeah, shout out to Pavilion for putting on events that connect me with other like-minded folks like yourself. So it's been awesome to stay connected, and yeah, like I said, really happy to be here today.
Absolutely. Well, just as a quick sort of summary, you've been a sales leader for many years. You have, I think, a unique view in not only building sales organizations, but organizations in general, being part of those teams, and then specifically being able to understand the types of assets or tools that sales teams need to be able to close deals, whether that's also impacting the sales cycle or speeding those things up, or just increasing your likelihood to actually closing those deals. So what I wanted to do today was kind of kick off with speaking to some of the top challenges that you've seen sales leaders kind of deal with now in 2024, and what advice would you give them for really mitigating? And I know there's a lot of stuff that's been going on. It's sort of like always going on, right? Even I think I remember during the days where I was a door-to-door salesperson, I remember in my training, one of the things that they taught us was to overcome adversity and the excuses that can arise internally as a salesperson, but also as the leader of salespeople. And that, this organization had been around at that time, I think, for like 150 years. So like they had started selling Bibles in the Bible Belt, right, in the United States. And they were creating this ability for folks coming back from the Civil War to actually generate income, right? Because you had these soldiers who were coming back. And many, many years later, you could imagine all the adversity they went through. Many years later, I was going through a similar training that they had. So again, I just wanted to say that, for the folks out there, we've all been going through adversity throughout the course of time, especially as salespeople. We have to deal with that stuff every day. So our ability to actually overcome that is really important and stay resilient. So, but back to my question here, if you think about what those top challenges are, what would you say they sort of, or which ones stand out to you?
Sure. Yeah, and I love to hear that you got your start in door-to-door sales. I did as well. And when I think back to that, that is how I realized I had kind of what it took to stay in sales, the grit, right? Like having to go, I was pulling doors in 90-degree heat, wearing a suit in the summer of in Florida, in Jacksonville, Florida. And but I pushed through it, and almost got shot a couple times, and but I wouldn't trade that time for anything, because like you said, it kind of showed me I had what it took to kind of like overcome the challenges that I would face in my sales career over the next 19 years. And man, the challenges back then of pulling door-to-door sales, doing door-to-door sales, and like what I'm thinking about today, are pretty different. They're way different. But you still got to have that resilience to kind of figure things out, right? But yeah, I mean, there's so many things you can go down this rabbit hole, and like what are the challenges that sales leaders are facing. And I've been in many different types of companies in different stages, and there do seem to be like this constant theme that I see within organizations, and I saw in 2023, and I see quite often. And so I'll break it down like into three things that I think about a lot when common challenges that I'm overcoming and seeing others trying to overcome. And the first one is just like, well, a big theme is we have to do more with less. Like everyone's talking about that, right? How do we do more with less, quit growing at all costs, and we have to grow efficiently and responsibly. And to do that, we have to build out plans, and we have to build out these like go-to market plans, that are going to allow us to grow in a responsible manner. But in order to be able to do that, you got to kind of be able to predict, right, what's going to happen based on the inputs that you're going to be executing on. And companies just don't have the data. Like, so I really see this big data problem where companies can't even figure out how to build an efficient growth plan because they haven't been tracking the right metrics, or maybe they know what those metrics are, but they haven't been capturing them correctly in say the CRM, for example. So that's a big challenge. I just that I'm seeing, and I think leaders have to make sure that they're spending time in order to be able to capture the right inputs so that they know and can predict how to grow efficiently. And so like the solution there is invest in ops as early as you can. Like get someone that knows how to capture this stuff, set it up, and make sure you're doing that as soon as possible so that you can build these plans and not get caught doing things that don't make sense for the business. So that's one big one. Another challenge I see is like I continually see leaders, and I've had issues with myself with this, is just like under investing in skill development, like and having in a time where we have to make sure we're really efficient, not doing everything we can to ensure that we're not wasting at bats. We have to be, have every good opportunity that we get, we have to give ourselves the best chance of winning that opportunity. So I see a lot of times we're under investing in ensuring that we are having that above or excellent batting average. So some things that I think could help with that would just like defining a sales process, no matter what it is, like just having an example of what an actual good sales process looks like so that your team knows exactly what they should be doing as they move someone throughout the buyer's journey. Show them what amazing looks like. Don't just tell them that this is the process, but then show them what that looks like. And just put an emphasis on like the basics. So there's so many salespeople I see can get lazy and just forget to do the basics. So I guess like the challenge there is like we're not spending enough time upskilling our reps so that they are knocking it out of the park as many times as they can. And I think one way to do that is just like really defining what good looks like, coaching to that, and then making sure that we're executing on the basics really well. And then the third thing I see is just motivating teams. Like I think all sellers are kind of like, am I next? Am I on the chopping block? Like, what's the company doing? And so how do you keep a team motivated, in challenging times is something I think everyone's, thinking about. So just making sure that you're celebrating the small wins. I find it goes a long way to have a one-to-one relationship with each person on your team and really understand, like, make sure that they understand that you truly care about their development and their livelihoods, and they're not just a cog in the wheel or a number. And that you want to do what you can to make them successful, and then back it up with action, like really taking the time to understand that and backing it up with action, I find goes a long way and keeps people super engaged, and just being as transparent as possible, right? So just making sure that you're sharing as much as you possibly can, so people feel connected to the overall business and the mission that you all are working on. So
awesome. We've talked a lot about buying committees and how they've really grown over the last couple of years. And even though in enterprise, it's always been the case that you had multiple stakeholders, what advice would you give sales leaders out there around effectively dealing with having to, deal or sell to these growing buying committees, and particularly when we're trying to fit into tight budgets?
Yeah. There's some good content I've read out there, and I think it's so true about like buyer enablement. As salespeople, once you get that qualified deal, literally throughout the buyer's journey, right? No matter what stage they're at, they're not even aware of their problem yet. Really, what you're doing is you're enabling that buyer, and I think what our job as salespeople, and when you're dealing with the committee, you're usually going to have one main point of contact, right? We're all searching for that champion, who's going to be that true champion that's going to go in and fight those internal fights for you when you're not sitting in the room. And so what do we do as sellers to make them look good and make their job as easy as possible when they're working internally? So I think you have to have that empathy, right, to be able to think about what they're going to go through internally when trying to get something done, and be able to know how to support that really, really well. Another thing just that I found worked well in multi-threading and kind of selling to a committee is like understanding that each different persona within your buying committee is going to have different kind of requirements and motivations. I've found it really valuable to break up those meetings where you can address those things. The more time you can get with your buyer, the higher level of trust is built. But sometimes sellers have trouble thinking, like, what should I get as that? They do the demo, they do the discovery, they do the demo, and they're like, all right, well, let's move to proposal. And then like, I'm waiting for a signature. And then the deal just kind of, they go dark and you're like, what happened? They have trouble thinking about like, what could be those next steps outside of those. And I think if you can think about the buying committee as a set of different next steps, you're going to be able to generate really valuable meetings, 3-4 other valuable meetings that you could be having in between, while they're doing that decision-making process, and breaking those up so you can address those different things in those separate meetings. I think is something I've seen work really well and kind of differentiate you as a seller, get more time with your buyer, and really address all the different factors that are going into making a decision with depth.
Awesome. Oh, I wanted to shift quickly over to sales collateral. Of course, it's a topic that is near and dear to our hearts over here at Asset Deal. What would you say are some of the reasons why sales teams should really embrace sales collateral, and actually, like, how should they do that and actually use it, right? Because this is one of the biggest, issues, I think, for not only sales leaders or managers trying to get their team to actually use it on a consistent basis, but of course the marketing counterparts. And I think it leads to a lot of this friction between marketing and sales, because marketing goes, hey, I've created a bunch of stuff, y'all don't use it, but you're still coming to me asking me for updates and new stuff and these sort of things.
So like content for sales, really, my belief is that the main value of it is it builds trust with the buyer. When you have really good content, you're doing good follow-up with the buyer, and you're, like I said, arming your buyer with really good content, then it builds trust. And it does differentiate you, because as a salesperson, you'll hear me say that quite often, just because I believe that the way you sell is one of your biggest differentiators as a salesperson, sometimes more so than the product or the company or anything else. It's like you as a salesperson, especially if you're in a competitive market, the way you sell has got to differentiate you. And I think content and the way you use it can really build a lot of trust. So, I think that to your comment around like marketing and sales kind of fight, like we create content and they don't use it. There's a couple of things I've seen going on there. Is that one, the content that marketing has created, as much as maybe they feel like there's a feedback loop going on, it isn't really what sales needs. And that's, I think, a big challenge that I see, for that sales leaders face, and I've faced almost, I think, in every company, is just like, you don't have enough content, enough of the right type of content. It might be really general, and like general content and like case studies that, are kind of surface level and not industry or persona specific. They fall really flat. So I think there has to be this like really well balanced combination of like a volume of content that is actually useful based on based on your ICP and the personas that you're talking to and the industries that you're talking to. Like, you got to think about how you can really scale that and have relevant content. I think relevance is so important in prospecting and in deal follow up. You got to be able to create that, but create relevant content. I think is super important. And then, like, I think communication is like, where do these assets live? There has to be like this consistent sales enablement for the team so they know where to find content. There has to be success stories, be able to show like, hey, this person used this content. Like, I love being able to see like the content that was used throughout the entire journey, and what the best sales reps are using in certain situations. Like, we got to be able to have that type of feedback loop internally so that reps go and use it. Because I do find a lot of times reps just don't use the content because they don't know where it is, or they don't believe that it will really help them out. Or, I think those are the two big ones. Or it's like a pain in the ass to, excuse my language, but it's pain to share the content as well because the format's whack, or there's typos. They just don't want to share it too. So.
Yeah, it's not easily edited. Those sort of things. Yeah, I mean, we hear it every day, right? So, that's, as we've continued to do research in the market, that's one of the things that comes up all the time. To your point, relevancy, right? Because I think that marketers will put stuff together in their silos, and there are a million reasons why, right? Specifically, like getting sales into a room takes them away from working deals, right? So, you might be able to pull that off consistently with like strategic accounts or tier ones and these sort of things, but it's hard to be able to do this on a consistent basis. And I think the way that marketing is doing, let's just call it product marketing, is doing research, sometimes it's hard to get actually into the rooms or the Zooms that actually provide that real kind of frontline experience. And so what research is showing versus what the salesperson is experiencing, I think there could be some sort of fragmentation there. So, some things that we definitely have to do better. I wanted to shift over to coaching because I know that's one of the things you love a lot. And if you thought about, let's say, tips that you would give sales leaders on becoming better coaches. And one thing, this is something that's like really dear to my heart, right? Because I believe, my personal opinion is that there is a distinction between a manager and a coach. And so, there could be some really great managers out there who do really good processes and administrative things, but they don't excel on the coaching side or suck at it, right? You see a lot of the times a top salesperson get promoted to manager and they're so about themselves because that's frankly what made them so good at being a salesperson in many ways, because they really focused on their personal success and that worked for them. But I think my personal opinion is being a great salesperson means that you're also a great teammate and all these other things. But that's a convo for another day. But if you were really to have to, sort of dig into the coaching piece, what tips would you give leaders out there around being a great coach?
Yeah. So I was in sales as an individual contributor and was kind of tapped to be brought up, move into leadership, into sales management, because for that reason, like I think I naturally was more of a coach than like the process guy. And I grew up playing sports. I had some great coaches throughout my life, so I kind of understood like what a good coach looked like and how they acted and what they did. So I was naturally, I feel like, a pretty good coach, and I got some relatively good feedback, over the years that I was. But really, where I think it changed the game for me is like anything else, like don't go through the motions and actually like implement a process for this. And one of my the VPs of sales that I rolled up into earlier on in my career, they actually had us read 2 books. One was the 5 Secrets of a Sales Coach and Crushing Quota. And I love these. Kind of changed the game for me because they gave me a specific framework on how to coach. So even though I felt like I was naturally a good coach, it actually gave me a framework on how to run coaching effectively. So I think that with the resources out there, just like a sales process, there's a coaching process, and it can help. You can teach, the most, a person that's not great at coaching that maybe was that great salesperson. I do think you can teach them to be a great coach if you give them the space and time to actually do the coaching. Like if you're drowning people in spreadsheets, making them do forecast updates, and they just don't have that's why people aren't doing good coaching, is they don't have the time to do it. So you have to prioritize it, all the way from the top down. And your sellers want it. They're craving coaching. Like if you talk to any seller, 9 times out of 10, if you ask them like what do they want more of, a lot of times it's going to be coach. They want better coaching. They want to get better. Because most people in sales are growth minded, and they want to continue to improve. They want to and make more money. So how does that happen? Through effective coaching, and they're just not getting it. So how do we make sure that we're dedicating the time and then making sure we have the processes to be effective at it? And I think those 2 books that I mentioned are great. And what some of the principles that I've like a little bit more tactically is like focusing on one thing at a time. Like go figure out what's one thing that can make a huge impact. Let's focus on coaching the rep on that. And then before you move to the next thing, so you're not overwhelming them. And to get to that thing that you want to coach on, I find a lot of value in it to be the most effective as far as outcomes when you're having the person you're coaching self-diagnose what that thing should be. You can agree or disagree, and make sure you're steering, and you probably already should know like what that thing is. But even when I do know, I like to have people self-diagnose, because the light bulb will come on a lot faster when they're self-diagnosing and coming to conclusions as you're guiding them. You're like the Sherpa to that solution and to the problem and the solution. And I find it sticks a lot more, and they get more gratification out of it when they kind of feel like they're figuring it out for themselves as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show today. Very much appreciated. If folks wanted to get in contact with you, maybe follow you on social, or maybe get your advice on how to be a great sales coach, sales leader, use collateral, these sort of tactics, what are the best URLs or handles to reach you?
Yeah, right now it's LinkedIn. I do have a personal OKR for 2024 to build my own site, but yeah, that will be later on. But for now, it's just LinkedIn.
All right, awesome. Well, again, have a great day. Hope to see you at the next Pavilion event, and yeah, keep rocking.
All right, thanks.